Hi, so I, 22F, cut my father out of my life, 6 months back, when he decided to skip my graduation ceremony, even after promising for months that he would be there, no matter what. I might have even forgiven him if he had skipped it due to some actual emergency, but he skipped it because he was out for a vacation with his new girlfriend and her son. So at my graduation ceremony, it was just me, my mom, and my brother, and he didn't even have the courtesy to inform me beforehand. So she and I kept waiting for him to respond to my phone calls and messages before the ceremony, and when he finally did, he told me that he was not even in the country. Apparently, he and his girlfriend were celebrating 1 year of being together, and so, they felt like they deserved a break from their work and everything, which is why they had taken off. He told me that my graduation ceremony had completely slipped his mind, but I did not believe it. I know for a fact that he remembered it, but chose not to attend on purpose. Of course, after something like that, I did not want him to be part of my life anymore, and when, after he returned from his vacation, he tried to get in touch with me, I told him that I did not want to speak to him anymore. Since then, we have not been on talking terms, and it's been 6 months. Initially, he tried to visit me a couple of times, but I made it very clear to him that he was not welcome in my home anymore, and after that, he stopped trying to make things right with me. But all of a sudden, last week, he showed up yet again, and this time, it was to ask me for my help because apparently, he has been slammed with a lawsuit by his girlfriend and he needs me to testify in his favor. When he showed up last week, I refused to open the door to him because so far, he hasn't apologized to me even once, he just keeps trying to justify everything. But then, he told me that it was an emergency, and then, out of curiosity, when I decided to give him a chance to speak, he explained the entire situation to me. I'll try to keep it short. Basically, Nina, his girlfriend, had been away for the weekend with a couple of her friends, and she had left her son behind with my dad. He had promised her that he would take care of him, but unfortunately, there was a little bit of a mishap. And now, Nina is demanding that he pay her about $30,000 in reparations because her son is apparently traumatized, but my father doesn't think that he owes her that much, especially since he's not even the biological father. So he needs me to testify in case this goes to court, which he thinks it might since it'll be vital coming from his daughter. But I refused, due to a couple of reasons. The first one being that I do think that the situation is kind of his fault, even though I don't fully agree that he owes her that much money. However, I know that Nina's son has autism, and even though it's not very obvious, it's still a thing. Besides, he's just 8 years old, and given the circumstances, I don't think it was wise for my father to have taken his attention off of him. My father had a meeting with a prospective investor in the evening while Nina was away, so even though he had promised her that he would keep an eye on her son, he decided to prioritize his meeting and the kid to go outside and play in the backyard. My dad's house has a huge tree in the backyard, and for whatever reason, Nina's son tried to climb up, even though he had very little experience of climbing trees before, and since it was the evening, it was also pretty dark. Unfortunately, he was able to get pretty far, but then, he slipped and fell from quite a height. Luckily, he did not break anything, but he had a concussion, and my father discovered him only after the meeting. He was scared of how Nina might react, so he did not inform her that day and even told her son not to tell his mother anything about their ER visit. But that incident just slipped out, and after Nina came back, she ended up finding out about it anyway. Naturally, she was very upset, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, after which she moved out, and a few days later, she and her lawyer served him with the lawsuit. Personally, I don't think Nina did anything wrong, and I'm completely on her side on this one. So morally and ethically, I really don't think that I can stand by my father, and I told him that my advice to him would be to just suck it up and give her the money because he owes it to her. Another reason why I did not want to commit to him that I would testify in his favor if this does go to court, is because I still haven't forgotten that we haven't been in touch for the past 6 months, and it's been because of his behavior. He can't just randomly show up at my house one day and expect me to help him out. So I made it very clear to him that I was not going to be testifying in his favor, and he got very upset with me because of that. He told me that being his daughter, I should be more understanding of him instead of being so selfish. The fact that he called me selfish really got on my nerves, and I lost it with him after that, and I ended up saying a lot of things to him out of anger. I told him that, even though 6 months had passed since he failed to show up at my graduation ceremony, he had still not apologized to me, even once, and all that he had tried to do was justify what he had done. It obviously showed me how little he cared about me, and since we have always had a very difficult relationship, I told him that I am sort of glad that he chose not to apologize to me or speak to me in the past 6 months, because it just made everything easier for me, and now, I don't have to pretend with him anymore. I told him that I'm happier without him in my life, and I'm sure that Nina and her son will be better off without him too, so he should just pay her the money and end this, because there is no way I'm going to be supporting him in any case. And then, Before I could ask him to leave, he just turned around and left without another word. I did not think this was a big deal because honestly, I was really upset and I didn't even know what he had been expecting. Anyway, 3 days after that, my mother called me, and after some small talk, she asked me about the fight with my dad and I told her everything. She told me that my father had spoken to her as well, and even though they are not exactly the best of friends, he had expressed how disappointed and let down he had felt when I had said that I was better off without him in my life. My mom told me that when he had called her up, he had been crying, and that came as a bit of a shock to me because my dad is not the kind of guy who cries easily. But apparently, since this is too personal to be shared with any of his friends, he spoke to my mother and told her that he is really struggling financially right now because he quit his job a couple of months ago and is relying on his savings right now because he's planning on starting his own business. And now, with the lawsuit and everything, he has to think about double the expenses that he had factored in and all his finances have been thrown off. Besides, if he ends up losing, there is a very real chance that because of the settlement that Nina is asking for, he might not be able to start his business at all anytime soon, and that'll be huge trouble for him. So he stands a chance to lose everything that has worked so hard, and he's already pretty stressed out because of that, which is why what I said about him made him even more upset. My mother didn't say anything about what I should do, but ever since I found out about the fact that he had called her up and cried, I feel really guilty. I'm not sure if I should feel guilty, but I just do. So I am here for some clarity right now. Ida, for telling my father that I am better off without him in my life? Update 1. Hey, so I have made up my mind. I don't think I'm going to apologize to my father because while I can understand that he is going through a tough situation right now, I don't think he has earned my apology. Besides, even he hasn't apologized to me for skipping my graduation so he could go on that trip with Nina and her son. Even in the beginning, when I had expressed how upset I was that he hadn't even bothered to let me know until the very last minute and had given me false hopes for months, he had only tried to defend himself. As I had already mentioned in my original post, my father and I do not share a good relationship anyway, and this was pretty much the last straw for me. So I don't think that I'm doing the wrong thing by choosing to stay away from him. I even told my mom about it, and she told me that this is between me and my dad, so she has no opinions on it. She can understand why I am choosing not to apologize, and she wants me to know that it's going to cost my relationship with my dad, but if I'm ready to deal with that, then it's fine. She has maintained a pretty neutral stance on this, and I respect that. Contrary to popular belief, no, guys, she hasn't been pressuring me to apologize to him, and I was the only one who had been feeling guilty. She did not say anything to make me feel guilty. I'm sorry if it came off that way in my original post. And yeah, my parents are still in touch, because even though I'm grown up now, I still have my 14-year-old brother and they are co-parenting him. So they have to stay in contact, and that is why my father had decided to call my mother up and talk to her about me and whatever I had said to him. Even apart from that, their divorce had been a mutual one, and there is no bad blood between them, so it's quite understandable that he had decided to speak to my mother about it. I can assure you guys that he was not trying to turn my mother against me, and even if he had, it was not going to work. Anyway, I thought about the situation for a really long time, and I spoke to a couple of people about it too, and eventually, I just decided that I had nothing to feel bad about because ultimately, he had screwed up. Not just with me, but also with Nina and her son. So whatever he was going through right now, it was his own fault. And now, coming to what exactly he had been saying to me to defend himself instead of apologizing for skipping my graduation. This was not directly relevant to the situation, so I hadn't gone into the details, but since a lot of you want to know exactly what happened, here it is. About 3 months before my graduation, I started asking my dad if he would be free to attend or not because he's usually really busy with work. As I had said, he had recently quit his job, so he was working on building his business model, speaking to investors, and all that jazz. This is why he was hardly ever available, so I had to keep reminding him and asking him about whether he would be present at the ceremony or not, and he constantly told me that he definitely would be there. So naturally, I had expected him to be there after he had promised it to me. But then, when I started trying to call him on the morning of my graduation ceremony and he chose to respond to me after almost an hour, just to tell me that he was not even in the country and was on vacation with Nina and her son, it broke my heart. That day, I did not want to ruin the vibe of the event, so I didn't even argue with him. I just hung up and blocked him. Even later, when I did unblock him, I expected him to apologize to me, but he just kept justifying everything, telling me that it had all slipped his mind, even though I knew it was not possible. Even 2 weeks before the event, I had asked him if he would be there and he had said yes. So how was it possible that it had just slipped his mind? And even if, for a moment, I decided to entertain the possibility that maybe he had actually forgotten, It still didn't make sense that he had the time to go out with Nina and her son, but he didn't have enough time to spare for us. Because in the past couple of months, even my brother has hardly ever visited him, even though according to the custody arrangement, he is supposed to spend alternate weeks with our dad, but my father had been canceling that too. At least with my brother, he had spent some time when my brother was younger because both of them were really into sports. Unfortunately, I don't have any common interests with my dad, which is why I have always been very distant from him, but I have always tried my very best to include him in my life. He was the one who never showed any interest, and now, he has even started distancing himself from my brother. It hurts all of us, and even my mother has tried to fix the situation, but there's only so much one can do. Even after missing my graduation, he kept making excuses for himself and trying to defend what he had done by saying that he was too busy with work and that's why he had forgotten. And then later on, he started telling me that he and Nina had been working really hard, so he deserved a break and I couldn't hold that against him, which is just much worse as an excuse. The bottom line is, he has failed both his children and that's why I don't feel very inclined to apologize to him or feel sorry for him. All of this has been a choice, he's definitely not a victim in any sense of the word. Update 2. So, because I'm not talking to my dad and he's also been blocked for a really long time, he decided to continue speaking to my mother about this. My mother is usually a very non-confrontational person, which is why she maintained a neutral stance on this all along. She had made it clear that she did not want to get involved. She only passed on the message to me because she was just casually sharing her conversation with my dad with me. She did not intend on pressuring me to apologize to him or whatever, but now, my father is trying to get her to do that and she's not on board with it. It has been more than a week since he visited me and I haven't been speaking to him, so even though he was behaving normally in the initial few days, a couple of days ago, he started pestering my mother. This morning, she called me and she sounded really annoyed. So she told me that my dad had apparently been calling and texting her nonstop for the past couple of days. And he was trying to get her to convince me to testify in his favor, in case this went to court, because right now, they are trying to sort it out in mediation, but both of them are getting stuck and things are not looking too good. But my mother has been telling him that she does not want to get involved, that this is between me and my dad and she doesn't want any part of it. He just doesn't get it, though, and apparently, last evening, they got into a really ugly fight. And even my mother ended up telling my dad off about how he had been behaving, and that she wasn't surprised that I had decided to cut him out of my life and was not going to help him out because he had never put in the hard work to build a relationship with me in the first place. So now, he couldn't just expect me to bend over backward for him. That was unfair and unreasonable of him. On top of that, his expectation that my mother would step in and convince me to testify in his favor when I had made it so clear that I did not want to do it, was unreasonable too, because at least she was just trying to be neutral and keep things peaceful between the two of them. But given the circumstances, she had every reason to be upset with him too, because he had been extremely absent from his children's lives for a really long time now. My mother had been trying to be patient and understanding with my father because even though they were divorced now, she still had to raise my brother with him. And even before that, they had been together for a really long time, so she was trying to keep things amicable until now. But after their fight last evening, she really read him the riot act and told him that he had no right to be demanding anything from any of us because he had barely even been there for anybody in the past. He had some sort of a relationship with my brother at least, but with me? Forget about it. He hadn't ever even tried, and my mother told him that she had been trying to keep her opinions to herself because she did not want to make the situation worse for either of us, in case we wanted to work on it at some point. But now, she could see that even if I were open to working things out with my father, it would never work because my dad was too selfish and deluded to even see that. That's why he hadn't even been there for me at my graduation ceremony, in spite of promising me for months that he would be there. His priorities had always been different. At first it had been his family, and now, even though he is with somebody different, it's still difficult for him to prioritize his loved ones. That's why Nina had to dump him, and that's why he was getting sued right now, because even now, he couldn't even be bothered to live up to his promises and look after a literal child for a couple of hours. He got defensive once again and told my mother that he was just trying to build a life for himself and be successful. It was not a crime. My mother ended up telling him that while it was not a crime, he was doing all of this at the cost of his family and loved ones, so he needed to stop pretending to be the victim. If anything, he was the victim of his own actions, and he couldn't just expect everyone to be sympathetic towards him when he didn't have any empathy for anybody else. Then, she just disconnected the phone call and blocked him. She didn't want to bother me last night, so she did not call me, but this morning, she felt like she had to talk to somebody about it, and my brother is too young to discuss these things, so she spoke to me. Just like me, she had also been feeling guilty for yelling at my dad, even though he was going through so much already. And I reassured her that she hadn't done anything wrong. He has been bringing this on to himself all along. So we really don't need to feel bad for him right now. Update 3. So, it has been 2 weeks since my last update. Last week, my mother decided to speak to my father about my brother's custody arrangement. After a really long discussion with me and my brother, we came to the conclusion that at this point, it would be better for my brother to stay with my mother full time. As it is, my father did not seem very interested in having a relationship with him because for the last couple of months, like I had mentioned earlier, he had been canceling on my brother quite frequently. They hardly even got to see each other anymore, and even when my brother would stay at my dad's place, he said that my dad would always be busy with work and he would much rather stay with my mother throughout because visiting his father, at this point, was just an unnecessary inconvenience for him now. It was harsh but true, and after hearing him out, my mother decided that she was going to speak to a lawyer and revise the arrangement. There's no need to do it formally because I'm pretty sure that my dad wouldn't have minded anyway, since he hasn't even asked about my brother in the past couple of weeks and neither has he seen him. But my mom wanted to go through with it legally because my brother is still 14 and there's still 4 years to go before he is an adult. She doesn't want to leave anything up to chance, so just to be on the safe side, she's going through the trouble of speaking to a lawyer about this. And I totally get it, she's just looking out for my brother and herself. She is even being lenient enough to let my father have visitation rights, even though in my opinion, right now he totally doesn't even deserve it because of how emotionally distant he has been from everyone. My brother wasn't happy that this was going to happen, but even he agreed that it had to be done because of how complicated things had become. Anyway, her terms seem fair enough, so she has already spoken to a lawyer, but just so that she doesn't end up blindsiding my father, she decided to tell him about her decision as well. For that, she needed to unblock him and speak to him on the phone, and that did not go well. After she spoke to him on the phone and informed him about her decision, he started yelling at her and accusing her of trying to turn all his children against him. He said that the reason I was no longer on speaking terms with him was because of her apparently, which was just absurd because it is definitely because of my father himself. My mother has nothing to do with it, but my dad said that if my mom had at least tried to talk some sense into me, maybe I wouldn't have acted like this. I thought it was really stupid of him to say that, but anyway, my mother did not want to drag out the fight, so she just hung up as soon as he started yelling at her, and she thought that it would be the end of the fight, but of course not. The day after that phone call, he showed up at my mom's house and started demanding an explanation as to what she was doing. She refused to let him in, and he had a full-blown meltdown on the front porch after trying to kick the door out of anger for almost 3 whole minutes. My mother found that really scary, so she ended up calling the cops, and now, she's even considering getting a restraining order against him because he is clearly unstable. It's sad, but it has to be done. On top of that, he hadn't even left me out of this and sent me a message from a burner phone, saying that I was an ungrateful and useless daughter, and he was disgusted that he had to be related to somebody like me. In that message, he said that he was really glad that he had never bothered to build a relationship with me because it would clearly not have been worth it, since I don't understand what it means to be grateful to people for whatever they have done for us. I don't understand what he was going on about because whatever he had done for me as a father was the bare minimum. If he is talking about raising me, he was hardly even there for the job. And he can't say that he was too busy working, which is why he never had time for me. My mother was a working woman too, and yet, she always seemed to find time for her children. The truth was, he's just never been ready to have a family, and even now, he's not ready. I don't have to be grateful to him for anything. Whatever he did for me as a parent was what he was bound to do. And as soon as I turned 18, he practically forgot that I was his daughter. So he was only there for me out of obligation, not because he loved me as his daughter. And since that's the case, he has no right to complain that I don't value him as my father because he was hardly ever there for me anyway. Update 4. Hi, so it has been a couple of weeks since my last update, and my dad decided not to fight her for my brother's custody. About 2 weeks after my last update, my dad reached out to my mother through his lawyer and said that he was ready to agree to the terms of the custody arrangement. She was a bit taken aback, but then, she received a message from my father via email, saying that he just didn't want to have any drama in his life anymore. So he was ready to agree to whatever she thought fit, and even in the future, if she didn't want their son to be seeing him anymore, she was free to arrange that as well. It was very depressing to read that email because honestly, it painted him like the biggest victim on this planet, and that was really not the situation right now. He was just having to face the consequences of his own actions, but anyway, my mother decided not to reply to it and indulge him. She ignored it, but she has that message saved, so in the future, if he tries to do anything funny, she will have that. In the same email, He had also mentioned that he had agreed to Nina's terms as well and was paying her the settlement that she had wanted so that wouldn't end up going to court. The last part of that message, I think he sent that to both me and my mother. And I'm guessing he sent that to Nina as well, just from the tone of it, but I'm not sure because she and I are not close so I can't find out. Anyway, the last paragraph from that email is something that he also sent to me, and it basically said that he didn't want us reaching out to him ever again because now, he only wanted to focus on his business and he didn't want our drama ruining and disrupting his life again. He said he's done with us females, and the drama that we bring for no reason, so he wants us to stay away for the sake of his own peace. And the way he put that, makes me think that he probably sent that to Nina as well, but anyway, he has some guts sending that to us after he created so much drama for no reason. It's crazy how delusional he is that even after so much has happened, he literally cannot see that he is the problem here and not us. My mom and I actually ended up having a good laugh at his audacity to say that he doesn't want us to contact him again as if we were the ones disrupting his life in the first place. Anyway, it doesn't matter because the only person this kind of behavior is going to harm is himself. I'm happy with my life, and so is my mother, and even my brother doesn't seem to care anymore. He can stay alone, for all I care. We don't care enough to be a part of his life anymore, and I was right all along. We truly are better off without him.